The frozen wind cut through Emma Foster's threadbare coat like 1,000 tiny knives as she stumbled into Shafter, Texas, on that bitter January afternoon in 1878, her boots leaving bloodstains in the snow where blisters had broken open days ago. She had walked for 3 days straight after the stagecoach driver abandoned her 20 miles back when she could not pay the remaining fare. Her husband had died of cholera 6 months prior in Missouri, and his debts had consumed everything they owned. With no family and no prospects, Emma had sold her wedding ring for a ticket west, chasing rumors of work in the Texas settlements. But the money had run out, and now here she stood in a town she had never heard of until this moment, with nothing but the clothes on her back and a small cloth bag containing a hairbrush, a needle and thread, and a photograph of her mother. The main street of Shafter stretched before her like a frozen river. Buildings lined both sides, their wooden facades weathered by sun and wind. Smoke rose from chimneys, promising warmth that felt like a distant dream. Emma's legs trembled with exhaustion, and her vision blurred at the edges. She had not eaten since yesterday morning when a kind farmer's wife had given her bread and cheese. Her stomach cramped painfully, reminding her that survival required more than determination. She passed a general store, a saloon, and a blacksmith shop before her legs finally gave out. Emma collapsed against a hitching post, sliding down into the snow, too weak to care about the cold anymore. Her eyes drifted shut, and she thought perhaps this was how it would end. At least the cold would make it quick. "Madam, madam, are you hurt?" The voice came from somewhere above her, deep and concerned. Emma forced her eyes open and saw a man crouching beside her. He was tall, she could tell even with him kneeling, with broad shoulders covered by a heavy sheepskin coat. His face was weathered but young, perhaps in his mid-20s, with gray eyes that studied her with genuine worry. Dark hair fell from beneath his hat, and his jaw was shadowed with several days of stubble. "I am just resting," Emma tried to say, but her words came out as barely a whisper. The man frowned and placed a gloved hand on her forehead. "You are freezing. How long have you been out here?" "I walked from where the stage left me. 3 days, I think." His eyes widened. 3 days in this weather, Lord above, you should be dead." He stood quickly and called out, "Charlie. Charlie, come help me." Another man emerged from the building behind them, older with silver in his beard. Together they lifted Emma, and though she wanted to protest, to maintain some shred of dignity, she had no strength left. The younger man carried her as though she weighed nothing, pushing through a door into blessed warmth. The heat hit her like a physical thing, and Emma gasped. They were in some kind of home, she realized. A fire roared in a stone fireplace, and simple but solid furniture filled the room. The walls were wood, chinked carefully against the cold, and animal hides covered the floor. "Set her by the fire, Ethan," the older man said. "I will get blankets." Ethan. So that was his name. He settled Emma into a large wooden chair near the hearth, and the heat made her skin prickle painfully as circulation slowly returned. She looked up at her rescuer properly now. He was younger than she had first thought, probably 26 or 27. His face was handsome in a rugged way, with strong features and those striking gray eyes that watched her with concern. "What is your name, madam?" he asked, pulling off his gloves and coat. "Emma Foster," she managed, her voice stronger now. "I apologize for the trouble. I only needed a moment to rest." A moment to rest would have turned into a permanent sleep if you had stayed out there much longer. He moved to the kitchen area and ladled something from a pot on the stove. "Charlie, bring those blankets. She is shaking like a leaf." The older man returned with thick wool blankets that he wrapped around Emma's shoulders. The warmth was almost painful, but she welcomed it. Ethan brought her a cup of something hot, and when she sipped it, she tasted beef broth with herbs. Slowly, he cautioned. Your stomach will need time to adjust. Emma wanted to gulp it down, but she forced herself to take small sips. The liquid spread warmth through her chest, and she felt tears prick her eyes at the simple kindness. Where are you coming from? Ethan asked, settling into a chair across from her. Charlie had disappeared into another room, giving them privacy. Missouri originally. My husband died and I had nothing left there. I heard there might be work out west. You traveled all this way alone. I had no choice. The debts took everything. I sold what little remained for passage, but the money ran out. She met his eyes, fighting to keep her voice steady. I am not asking for charity. If you could perhaps direct me to someone who might need a cook or a maid, I can work. I am strong, or I will be again once I have eaten. Ethan studied her for a long moment. What kind of work did you do before? I ran my own household. I can cook, clean, so tend a garden. I can read and write and do figures. My husband was a school teacher before he fell ill and he taught me much. Can you handle ranch work? Cooking for ranch hands, managing supplies, that sort of thing? Hope flickered in Emma's chest. Yes, I could do that. Ethan nodded slowly. This is my ranch, the Lazy L. I inherited it from my father 2 years ago when he passed. It is not large, but I run about 200 head of cattle with the help of Charlie and 4 other hands. My mother used to manage the house and cook, but she died last spring. We have been making do, but honestly, the men are tired of burnt beans and tough bread. You are offering me work. I am offering you a position, yes. Room and board plus $30 a month. The work is hard and the hours are long, but you would have a warm place to sleep and 3 meals a day. $30 a month was more than generous. Emma had expected half that if she found work at all. I accept, she said quickly before he could change his mind. When would you like me to start? When you are well enough. For now, you need food and rest. He stood and moved back to the kitchen, returning with a plate containing bread, cheese, and cold meat. Eat slowly. Charlie will prepare the room my mother used. It is small, but it is warm and private. Emma took the plate with shaking hands. Thank you. I do not know how to express my gratitude properly. No need for gratitude, you will earn your keep. His voice was matter of fact, but his eyes were kind. Besides, I know what it is like to be alone in the world. When my parents died, this ranch and Charlie were all I had left. Sometimes people need a helping hand. As Emma ate, Ethan moved about the room, stoking the fire and tidying up in an unconscious way that spoke of habit. She watched him between bites, noting the way he moved with easy confidence, the strength in his hands, the thoughtful expression he wore. He was clearly a man comfortable in his own space, someone who had learned to be self-sufficient. There was something solid about him, dependable, that made her feel safe for the first time in months. Charlie returned and announced the room was ready. Ethan helped Emma stand, supporting her when her legs wobbled. He guided her down a short hallway to a small bedroom. It contained a single bed with a thick mattress, a dresser, a washstand, and a small window with curtains. After months of uncertainty and weeks of sleeping rough, it looked like paradise. There is water in the pitcher, Ethan said. It is cold, but I can heat some if you want to wash properly. Cold is fine, thank you. He nodded and moved toward the door, then paused. Emma, this is your home now. For as long as you need it to be, I know you have been through hardship, but that is behind you. You are safe here. Something in his voice made Emma's throat tighten with emotion. She had been so alone, so frightened for so long. To hear someone speak with such certainty, such kindness, was almost overwhelming. This is your home, he repeated, as if wanting her to truly understand. Then he left, closing the door quietly behind him. Emma stood in the middle of the small room, still wrapped in the borrowed blankets, and let herself cry for the first time since her husband's death. But these tears were different. They were not tears of grief or fear, but of relief and gratitude and something else she could not quite name. She was home. The next morning, Emma woke to bright sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment she was disoriented, then memory returned in a rush. The ranch, Ethan, the job. She sat up quickly, alarmed at how late she had slept. Her position was meant to begin immediately. What must they think of her, lying about while work needed doing? She washed quickly in the cold water, then realized with dismay that she had nothing to wear except the dirty, worn dress she had traveled in. It was hardly suitable for work. Taking a deep breath, she put it on anyway, smoothed her dark blonde hair as best she could, and ventured out into the main room. Ethan sat at a large wooden table, reviewing papers spread before him. He looked up when she entered, and his face broke into a slight smile. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" "Much better, thank you. I apologize for sleeping so late. It will not happen again. You needed the rest. There is coffee on the stove and biscuits in the warming oven. Charlie made them before he left for the north pasture." Emma poured herself coffee and retrieved a biscuit. They were dense and slightly burned on the bottom, confirming Ethan's earlier assessment of the cooking situation. She sat at the table, feeling awkward and unsure of protocol. "I should begin my duties," she said. "If you could tell me what needs doing, I will start immediately." Ethan set down his papers. "First, we need to address your situation. You cannot work in that dress, it is falling apart. Can you sew?" "Yes, quite well." "Good. In the storage room there are bolts of fabric my mother never used. Make yourself at least 2 work dresses and whatever undergarments you need. There should be enough material. Once you are properly outfitted, we can discuss the routine." "I cannot take your mother's fabric," Emma protested. "She would have wanted someone to use it. It is just sitting there collecting dust. Please, consider it part of your compensation." He stood and led her to a small storage room off the main living area. Inside were indeed several bolts of sturdy cotton fabric in various colors, along with thread, buttons, and other notions. "Take what you need." Emma ran her hand over the fabrics, her mind already designing practical work dresses. "This is very generous. It is practical. Now, while you sew, let me explain how things work here. Charlie has been with my family since before I was born. He is the foreman, and he oversees the other 4 hands. We have Miguel and his son Rafael, who are excellent with horses. Then there is Tommy, who is young but learning fast, and old Bill, who has forgotten more about cattle than most men ever know. They all live in the bunkhouse about 50 yards behind the main house." He moved to the kitchen and refilled his coffee. "Breakfast is usually at dawn, lunch at midday, and dinner after the work is done, around 7 or so. The men are not picky, but they need substantial food. Lots of meat, beans, bread, potatoes. On Saturdays, we usually do something special since it is the end of the work week. Sunday is a half day, so breakfast and a big lunch are sufficient." Emma listened carefully, mentally cataloging everything. "What about supplies? Where do you purchase food?" "The general store in town for staples. We have a vegetable garden that produced well last summer, though it is dormant now. There is a smokehouse with preserved meats, a root cellar with potatoes and such. I will show you everything once you have suitable clothing." "I could begin cooking immediately," Emma offered. "Make yourself some dresses first. Consider today your preparation day. Tomorrow you can start properly." He paused, then added, "There is one more thing. The men are good people, but they have been without female company for some time. If anyone makes you uncomfortable or speaks inappropriately, you tell me immediately." "Understood." "Yes, thank you." Over the next 3 days, Emma worked feverishly to create 2 simple but sturdy dresses. She had learned to sew from her mother and had always enjoyed it. The first dress she made was a dark blue cotton with a fitted bodice and full skirt, practical for work. The second was a lighter brown, similar in style. She also made several chemises and a new petticoat, grateful for the privacy to do so properly. During this time, she began to learn the rhythm of the ranch. Ethan left early each morning to work with the men, usually returning at midday for the meal Charlie continued to prepare. Emma helped where she could, learning the layout of the kitchen, the contents of the pantries and storage areas. She met Miguel, a quiet man in his 40s with kind eyes and limited English, and his son Raphael, who was 19 and shy. Tommy was 17, all gangling limbs and enthusiasm. Old Bill was probably in his 60s, weathered as old leather but sharp as a tack. They were all polite, tipping their hats and greeting her respectfully, though she caught them stealing curious glances. Charlie, she learned, was not just the foreman but practically family. He had worked for Ethan's father for 30 years and had helped raise Ethan after his mother's first illness made her an invalid. He was gruff but kindly, and Emma liked him immediately. On the 4th day, Emma rose before dawn and put on her new blue dress. It fit well, and though it was plain, it was clean and whole. She felt more like herself than she had in months. Moving quietly through the dark house, she lit lamps and built up the fire. The kitchen was well equipped, and she found flour, lard, eggs from the henhouse outside, and bacon from the smokehouse. By the time the sky began to lighten, she had biscuits in the oven, bacon sizzling, and eggs ready to cook. She made coffee strong and hot, the way she had noticed the men liked it. When she heard boots on the porch, she was ready. Ethan entered first, stamping snow from his boots. He stopped short when he saw her at the stove, properly dressed and clearly in command of the kitchen. Something flickered across his face, an expression Emma could not quite read. "Good morning," she said. "Breakfast will be ready in a few minutes. You did not have to start so early. This is my job. I intend to do it well." The other men filed in, removing hats and sitting at the long table. Emma served them efficiently. Fluffy biscuits, crispy bacon, perfectly cooked eggs. She had found a jar of preserved jam in the cellar and set it out as well. The men ate with single-minded focus, and the silence was broken only by the sounds of eating. Finally, old Bill pushed back his plate and said, "Miss Emma, that was the finest breakfast I have had in a year." "Closer to 2 years," Charlie corrected. No offense to the dead, but Ethan's mother was too sick to cook properly for a long time before she passed. "It was very good," Ethan agreed, his gray eyes meeting Emma's across the table. "Thank you." Emma felt a warm glow of satisfaction. She had been so useless for so long, dependent on the rapidly dwindling resources her husband had left. To be competent again, to contribute, felt wonderful. The men left for their work, and Emma cleaned up, then began taking inventory of the supplies more thoroughly. She found the root cellar well stocked with potatoes, carrots, onions, and turnips. The smokehouse contained several hams, sides of bacon, and strings of sausages. There were jars upon jars of preserved vegetables and fruits, likely put up by Ethan's mother before her death. The henhouse had 8 chickens who provided eggs daily. She spent the morning planning meals and making lists of what they would need from town. At midday, she prepared a hearty soup from ham bones and vegetables, with fresh bread she had made while the soup simmered. Again, the men ate with obvious appreciation. That afternoon, Ethan found her in the kitchen kneading dough for the next day's bread. "Do you have a moment to talk?" "Of course." Emma wiped flour from her hands and followed him to the main room where he gestured for her to sit. I wanted to check how you are settling in. Is the work manageable? Do you have everything you need? The work is fine. Very manageable, actually. I am accustomed to running a household. Your mother left things very well organized. She did. She was a remarkable woman. He paused, his expression growing distant. She fought her illness for 3 years before it finally took her. Even when she could barely stand, she would insist on overseeing things. You miss her greatly. Every day. And my father. He died of a heart attack in the North Pasture, just dropped off his horse and that was it. They had 42 years together. I used to think that was forever, but now I realize how short it really was. Emma understood that grief, the sudden realization of how fragile everything was. My husband and I only had 4 years. I thought we had decades ahead of us. I am sorry for your loss. I should have said that before. And I for yours. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. Emma found herself studying Ethan's face, noting the lines of sadness around his eyes, the weight he seemed to carry on those broad shoulders. He was so young to have lost both parents and to be running a ranch alone. "May I ask you something?" she ventured. "Of course. Why did you help me that day? You knew nothing about me. I could have been anyone." Ethan considered the question. "When my mother fell ill, we had to hire a woman from town to help with the nursing. Mrs. Patterson, her name was. She was a widow, struggling to make ends meet, and she needed the work desperately. My mother treated her with such kindness and respect, never making her feel like charity. She used to say that we are all just one stroke of bad luck away from ruin, and the measure of a person is how they treat those who have faced that ruin." He met Emma's eyes. "When I saw you in the snow, alone and desperate, I thought of Mrs. Patterson. I thought of what my mother would do." The answer was obvious. Emma felt her chest tighten with emotion. "Your mother raised a good man. She tried her best." He stood, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. "Anyway, I just wanted to make sure you were all right. If you need anything, just let me know." As the days turned into weeks, Emma settled fully into her role. She rose before dawn and went to bed long after dark, cooking, cleaning, washing, and mending. The work was endless but satisfying. The men were appreciative, and the house slowly began to show her influence. She scrubbed floors and washed windows, organized pantries, and mended clothes that had been left in disrepair. The place began to feel like a home again, rather than just a place where men slept between work shifts. She learned the rhythms of ranch life. The early mornings, the hard physical labor, the way work dictated everything. She learned to read the weather signs, to know when a storm was coming by the behavior of the animals. She learned to cook for hearty appetites, to make a little meat stretch far, to bake bread that would stay fresh for days. And she learned about Ethan. He was up before everyone else and often the last to bed. He worked as hard as any of his men, never asking them to do something he would not do himself. He was fair, patient when teaching young Tommy, respectful of old Bill's experience, and clearly fond of Charlie like family. He checked on his cattle daily, riding the fence lines to ensure they were secure, breaking ice on the water troughs in the bitter cold. Emma found herself watching for him, listening for his footsteps on the porch, looking forward to the meals when he would sit at the table and tell her about the work. He had started staying after the other men left, helping her clear dishes despite her protests. "You cooked for 6 men," he said one evening as he dried plates while she washed. "The least I can do is help clean up. It is my job. Even people who enjoy their jobs need help sometimes." He set down a dried plate and picked up another. "Besides, I like this time. The house is quiet and I can hear myself think." "Is it very loud in your head the rest of the time?" Emma asked, teasing gently. He laughed and the sound warmed her. "Sometimes. Running a ranch means constantly thinking 3 steps ahead. What needs fixing? What supplies need ordering? Which pasture to rotate? Is there enough feed for the winter? It is endless. Do you ever regret it? Taking on so much responsibility so young, Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering. No, this land is in my blood. My grandfather homesteaded here, built the original cabin with his own hands. My father expanded it, built it into a working ranch. Now it is my turn to leave it better than I found it. Maybe someday I will have children of my own to pass it to. The mention of children made Emma's heart twist. She and her husband had wanted children desperately, but it had never happened. Now she was 24 years old, a widow, and those dreams felt impossibly distant. "That is a nice dream," she said softly. "You not want children?" "I did. We tried, but—" She trailed off, not wanting to discuss such intimate details. "I am sorry. That was too personal a question. No, it is all right. I am just not accustomed to speaking so freely." She rinsed the last dish and dried her hands. "In my marriage, we did not talk much. My husband was a good man, but he kept his thoughts to himself." "That sounds lonely." Emma met Ethan's gray eyes and was struck by the genuine understanding there. "It was, sometimes, but it was better than being truly alone, which is what I am now." "You are not alone. You are here with us." "With me." He said it simply, as a statement of fact, but something in his tone made Emma's breath catch. "I suppose I am," she managed. The winter deepened, bringing blizzards that buried the ranch in snow and cold so intense that water froze almost instantly. During these times, the work became about simple survival, keeping the animals alive, keeping the house warm, keeping everyone fed. Emma worked alongside the men during the worst storms, carrying hay to the barn, breaking ice, doing whatever needed doing. One night, a blizzard hit with such ferocity that Ethan insisted the men sleep in the main house rather than risk the short walk to the bunkhouse. They arranged bedrolls in the main room, and Emma retreated to her small bedroom, listening to the wind howl like a living thing. She woke in the deepest part of night to the sound of someone moving around. Concerned, she wrapped a shawl over her nightgown and ventured out. Ethan stood by the fire, feeding it wood, dressed only in his trousers and a shirt he had not bothered to button fully. "Is something wrong?" she asked quietly, not wanting to wake the sleeping men. He turned, startled. "I did not mean to wake you. I was just checking the fire. In cold like this, it cannot be allowed to die down." Emma moved closer, holding her shawl tight. Even with the fire, the cold seemed to seep through the walls. "That storm sounds terrible." "It is. We are going to lose some cattle tonight. There is no way around it. We did everything we could but the ones in the far pasture." He trailed off, his jaw tight. "Come spring, we will find the losses. I am sorry. It is part of ranching. You learn to accept it, but it never gets easier." He poked at the fire, sending sparks spiraling up. "My father used to say that ranching teaches you about life. You do your best, but sometimes circumstances beyond your control determine the outcome. All you can do is keep working, keep trying, keep moving forward." Emma understood that philosophy well. "That is what I have been trying to do since my husband died. Some days it felt impossible, but you kept going. I did not have a choice." "There is always a choice. You chose to survive. That takes strength." He looked at her, his face shadowed in the firelight. "When I found you in the snow that day, I thought you were dead, but you were not. You were fighting. I admired that." Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the fire. "I did not feel strong. I felt terrified and hopeless." Strength is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite it. Ethan stepped closer, and Emma was suddenly very aware of how little either of them was wearing, of the intimacy of standing together in the firelight while others slept. "Emma, I want you to know that you have become essential to this place, To me, I do not know how we managed before you came. You would have found a way, maybe, but it would not have been the same. His voice was low, intense. You have brought life back to this house. Not just cooking and cleaning, but actual life. Warmth. Joy. I had not realized how much I was merely existing until you showed me what it meant to truly live again. Emma's heart pounded. She should say something, but words failed her. Instead, she simply stood there, looking up at this man who had saved her life and given her purpose. Ethan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were warm against her skin. I am not good with words like this. I have spent too many years talking to cattle and horses, but I need you to know that you matter. Not as an employee, but as a person. You matter to me. Ethan, she whispered, and then she did something impulsive, something entirely unlike her usual careful nature. She reached up and touched his face, feeling the roughness of stubble under her palm. He inhaled sharply, his hand coming up to cover hers. For a long moment they stood frozen, barely breathing. Then, as if by mutual agreement, they stepped apart. "We should sleep," Ethan said, his voice rough. "Tomorrow will be hard work digging out from this storm." "Yes, good night." Emma fled to her room, her heart racing. She climbed back into bed but could not sleep. Her hand still tingled where she had touched his face, and she could still feel the weight of his gaze. Something had shifted between them. Some line had been crossed. She was not sure what it meant, but she knew with certainty that nothing would be quite the same. The next morning they were both carefully polite, not quite meeting each other's eyes. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed by snow. The men dug paths to the barn, the chicken coop, and the bunkhouse. They checked on the cattle, and as Ethan had predicted, several head were lost. The mood was somber as they dragged carcasses away from the living animals. Emma kept busy with cooking and cleaning, making huge pots of stew and endless batches of biscuits. When Ethan came in for the midday meal, he was exhausted, his face drawn with worry and fatigue. She wanted to comfort him, to smooth the lines from his forehead, but she kept her distance, uncertain of her own feelings. February arrived with slightly milder weather, though winter still held the land firmly in its grip. Emma had been at the ranch for a month, and she could hardly remember her life before. This place had become home in a way nowhere else had, not even the house she had shared with her husband. One evening, as she and Ethan cleaned up after dinner, he said, "There is a dance in town this Saturday. The whole community gathers once a month for socializing. Would you like to go?" Emma paused in her washing. "I am not sure that would be appropriate. I am an employee, not family." "You are more than an employee. You are part of this ranch now. And people will talk if you never show your face in town. They will think I am keeping you prisoner or some such nonsense." He dried a plate carefully. "Besides, you have been working non-stop since you arrived. You deserve an evening of enjoyment." "I do not have anything suitable to wear to a dance." "There is more fabric in the storage room. You have time to make something if you want. But honestly, people dress practically. It is not a fancy affair." Emma considered. The idea of music and company beyond the ranch was appealing. And if she was honest, the thought of dancing with Ethan made her pulse quicken. "All right, I will go." His face brightened. "Good, I think you will enjoy it. The community here is small but welcoming." Emma spent her spare hours that week creating a dress suitable for a social occasion. She chose a deep green fabric that brought out the color of her eyes and made it in a simpler style than her work dresses, with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt. She had no jewelry, but she fashioned a ribbon for her hair and felt satisfied with the result. Saturday evening, she dressed carefully, pinning her hair up in a style more elaborate than her usual simple bun. When she emerged from her room, Ethan was waiting in his best clothes, dark trousers, a white shirt, and a vest. His hair was neatly combed and he had shaved. He looked handsome enough to make Emma's breath catch. His eyes widened when he saw her. "You look beautiful." "Thank you. You look very nice as well." They rode into Shafter in the wagon, the evening cold but clear. The stars were brilliant overhead, and Emma found herself relaxing into the simple pleasure of the ride. Ethan pointed out constellations, telling her their names and the stories behind them. His voice was warm and easy, and Emma felt comfortable in a way she had not felt with a man in years. The dance was held in the largest building in town, a structure used as both church and community center. Lights spilled from the windows, and music drifted out into the night. Inside, it was crowded and warm, full of people talking and laughing. A small group of musicians played fiddle, guitar, and harmonica in the corner. Ethan guided Emma through the crowd, introducing her to what seemed like dozens of people. She met ranchers and their wives, shopkeepers, the town doctor, the blacksmith, and more. Everyone was friendly, though she caught speculative looks passing between some of the older women. She knew they were wondering about her relationship with Ethan, and she could not blame them. A young widow living on a bachelor's ranch was bound to cause talk. When the music started up again, Ethan asked, "Would you like to dance?" Emma hesitated. She had not danced since her wedding, and that felt like a lifetime ago. But Ethan's expression was hopeful, and she found she wanted to say yes. "I would like that." He led her onto the floor and took her hand, his other arm settling at her waist. The contact sent electricity through her. They began to move, and Emma was surprised to find that Ethan was a good dancer, leading her confidently through the steps. "My mother insisted I learn," he explained, reading her expression. "She said a gentleman should know how to dance properly. I complained endlessly, but I am grateful now." Emma laughed. "I can imagine you as a boy protesting dance lessons. I was a terror. Ask Charlie sometime about the things I got up to. It is a wonder I survived to adulthood." They danced several numbers, and Emma felt lighter than she had in months. The music, the movement, the feel of Ethan's hand on her waist, all of it combined to create a sense of joy she had almost forgotten was possible. Other men asked her to dance as well, and she obliged, but she found herself always looking for Ethan, aware of where he was in the room. During a break in the music, a woman approached them. She was perhaps 30, attractive, with dark hair and a confident bearing. "Ethan Lewis, are you going to introduce me to your companion, or must I introduce myself?" "Emma Foster, this is Catherine Green. She owns the dress shop in town." "Catherine, Emma is managing my household." Catherine's eyes were sharp as she assessed Emma. "How nice for you, Ethan, to find such capable help, and how fortunate for Miss Foster to find employment. I heard she arrived in quite desperate circumstances." There was an edge to her tone that made Emma's spine stiffen. "I was fortunate that Mr. Lewis was kind enough to offer me work." "Oh, I am sure he was very kind indeed. Ethan has always been so generous with those less fortunate." Catherine placed a hand on Ethan's arm with easy familiarity. "Save a dance for me, won't you? For old time's sake." She drifted away, and Ethan sighed. "I apologize for Catherine. She and I courted briefly a few years ago. It did not work out, and she has never quite forgiven me." "You do not need to explain," Emma said, though she felt an uncomfortable twist in her stomach that she recognized as jealousy. "I want to explain. Catherine wanted a different life than I could offer. She wanted to move to Dallas or San Antonio to live in a proper city. She saw the ranch as primitive. When I made clear that I would never leave this land, she ended things. That was 3 years ago, but she still acts as though I broke her heart." "Did you break her heart?" "No, I bruised her pride. There is a difference." He looked at Emma intently. I have never been in love, not really. I cared for Catherine, but I always knew she was not the one. I was not heartbroken when we parted. Emma wanted to ask if he had found someone since, if there was anyone now, but the music started again and the moment passed. They danced more, ate food laid out on long tables, and talked with neighbors. It was a pleasant evening, but Emma could not quite shake the discomfort of Catherine's presence, and the reminder that Ethan's life before her arrival had been full of people and connections she knew nothing about. On the ride home, they were both quiet. The temperature had dropped and Emma shivered despite her shawl. Ethan noticed and wordlessly pulled a thick blanket from behind the seat, draping it over her lap. "Thank you," she said. "For tonight, I had a lovely time. I am glad." "You seem to enjoy yourself." "I did. It has been a long time since I felt so carefree." She paused, then asked, "Do you attend these dances regularly?" "Most months, yes. It is important to maintain ties with the community. Ranchers need each other out here. When there is trouble, your neighbors are all you have." "That makes sense." She wanted to ask about Catherine again, but held her tongue. "Emma, about Catherine, you do not need to explain anything to me. Your past is your own. But I want you to understand. She said some unkind things tonight, implying things about you and me. I do not want you to be hurt by gossip." Emma's stomach sank. "What kind of things?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "She suggested to several women that our arrangement is inappropriate, that you are more than a housekeeper." I set her straight, but you know how talk spreads. "I see." Emma felt cold that had nothing to do with the weather. She had been so happy tonight, but of course it could not last. Her position was precarious. An unmarried woman living with an unmarried man, regardless of the circumstances, would always invite speculation. "I am sorry," Ethan said. "I should have anticipated this. Maybe it was a mistake to bring you tonight. No, I am glad I went. But perhaps in the future it would be better if I stayed at the ranch." "That is not a solution. Hiding away will only make people talk more." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "There is another option." "What is that?" But he shook his head. "Never mind. I need to think it through properly first." They did not speak for the rest of the ride. When they arrived back at the ranch, Ethan helped Emma down from the wagon, his hands firm on her waist. For a moment they stood close in the darkness, and Emma felt the pull between them, strong as gravity. "Good night, Emma." "Good night, Ethan." She went to bed confused and unsettled, her mind churning with questions. What had he meant about another option? What was he thinking? And why did the idea of gossip about them being more than employer and employee not horrify her the way it should? Over the next few days, Ethan was distracted and distant. He still helped with dishes, still talked during meals, but something was different. Emma caught him watching her with an expression she could not read, and several times he seemed about to say something before falling silent. Finally, on Thursday evening, he asked if they could talk after dinner. Emma's stomach fluttered nervously as she cleaned up and then joined him in the main room. He stood by the fire, his posture tense. "I have been thinking about what happened at the dance," he began. "About the talk and about your position here." "I understand if you need me to leave," Emma said quickly, her heart sinking. "I know my presence is causing problems." "What? No, that is not." Ethan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "That is not what I am trying to say at all. Please, just let me finish." Emma nodded, folding her hands in her lap to still their trembling. "When you arrived, I offered you a job because you needed help and I needed someone to manage the household. That was the extent of it. But over these past weeks, something has changed. You are not just an employee. You have become essential to this place, to my life, in ways I did not anticipate." He took a breath. "Emma, I care about you, not as an employer, but as a man cares about a woman." Emma's heart began to pound. Ethan, please, let me say this while I have the courage. I know it is too soon. You are still grieving your husband, and we have known each other only a short time. But I need you to know how I feel because it affects what I am about to propose. He moved closer, kneeling down so they were at eye level. The simplest solution to the gossip, the most practical way to protect your reputation and ensure you can stay here without talk, is if we were married. Emma gasped. Married? I know it sounds sudden, but in truth, it makes sense. You need security and a home. I need a wife and partner. We get along well. We respect each other. And there is something between us, you must feel it too. An attraction, a connection. His gray eyes were intense. I am not proposing a marriage of convenience, Emma. I am proposing a real marriage because I am falling in love with you, and I hope that perhaps you might feel something for me too. Emma could not breathe. Everything she had carefully avoided thinking about was suddenly laid bare. Yes, she felt something for him. She had been denying it, telling herself it was gratitude or simple attraction, but it was more than that. Over these weeks, she had come to admire his strength, his kindness, his dedication. She loved the way he treated his men with respect, the way he cared for his animals, the way he spoke of his parents with such love. She loved his rare smiles, his dry humor, the competence with which he ran the ranch. But was she ready for this? It had been only 6 months since her husband's death. Was this too fast, too reckless? I know this is sudden, Ethan continued, reading her hesitation. I am not asking for an answer tonight. Take time to think. But Emma, I need you to understand something. When I told you that first night that this is your home, I meant it. I want it to truly be your home for always. I want to build a life with you. I want children with you someday, if you are willing. I want to grow old with you, sitting on that porch watching our grandchildren play. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you are strong and brave and kind. I know you work harder than anyone I have ever met. I know you have a good heart and a quick mind. I know that I have not felt this way about anyone before. He reached up and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. I know that I want to spend every day learning more about you for the rest of my life. Emma closed her eyes, overwhelmed. I do not know what to say. Say you will think about it. That is all I ask. She opened her eyes and met his gaze. I care about you too. More than I should, more than I thought possible so soon. But I am frightened, Ethan. My husband died so suddenly. I thought I would have a lifetime with him, and then he was gone. What if something happens? What if I let myself love you and then lose you too? That is a risk we all take. My parents knew it. They loved each other fiercely anyway for every day they had. Is it not better to have love, even if it might end, than to never have it at all? Emma thought of her marriage, which had been comfortable but never passionate. She had cared for her husband, but had she truly loved him? Looking back now, she was not sure. What she felt for Ethan was different, stronger, more alive. Yes, she whispered. It is better to love. Then take a chance with me. Marry me, Emma, not because it is practical, though it is, but because we could be happy together. I truly believe that. Emma took a shaky breath. She knew she should think about this logically, should weigh the pros and cons, should take time to consider, but her heart was speaking louder than her head. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you. Ethan's face broke into a brilliant smile, and he pulled her into his arms. Emma clung to him, breathing in the scent of leather and wood smoke and something uniquely him. He pulled back just enough to look at her, and then he kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, but when Emma responded, it deepened into something that made her head spin. This was nothing like the chaste kisses she had shared with her late husband. This was fire and passion and promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. I will make you happy, I swear it. I believe you. They sat together on the sofa, Emma tucked against Ethan's side, talking quietly about the future. They decided to marry quickly, within the month, to quiet the gossip. It would be a simple ceremony in town with the ranch hands as witnesses. They would send word to Emma's distant relatives, though she doubted any would make the journey. "I do not have much to bring to this marriage," Emma said. "No dowry, no possessions beyond what you have already given me. You bring yourself. That is everything I want." Ethan kissed the top of her head. "Besides, what is mine is already yours. This ranch, this house, everything. We are partners now." Emma felt a fierce rush of love for this man who had given her everything when she had nothing. "I will do my best to be a good wife. You already are, and we are not even married yet." They stayed up late, talking and planning, stealing kisses in the firelight. When they finally said good night and retreated to separate rooms, Emma lay in bed feeling as though her whole world had shifted on its axis. 2 months ago, she had been dying in the snow, alone and hopeless. Now she was engaged to a good man who loved her, with a home and a future stretching before her bright with possibility. The next morning, they told the ranch hands over breakfast. There was a moment of surprised silence, then Charlie started laughing. "About time you came to your senses, boy," he said to Ethan. "I have been watching the two of you dance around each other for weeks." Miguel and Raphael offered congratulations in their limited English, while Tommy grinned widely and old Bill nodded approvingly. "Miss Emma will make a fine addition to this family," he said. "You chose well, boss." "I know," Ethan said, his hand finding Emma's under the table and squeezing gently. They went into town that day to speak with the minister and make arrangements. Word spread quickly, and by the time they left the church, half the town seemed to know. Most people were congratulatory, though Emma noticed Catherine Green watching from across the street with narrowed eyes. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Emma made herself a simple wedding dress from white cotton, embroidered with tiny flowers. Ethan ordered supplies for a celebration after the ceremony, insisting they mark the occasion properly. The ranch hands helped prepare the house, and Miguel's wife, Rosa, who Emma had met at the dance, came out to help with cooking for the celebration. The night before the wedding, as tradition dictated, Ethan stayed in the bunkhouse with the men while Emma had the house to herself. She sat up late, thinking about the vows she would make tomorrow, about the life she was choosing. Was she moving too fast? Should she wait longer? But then she thought of Ethan's smile, his kindness, the way he made her feel safe and valued and loved. She thought of the future they had planned together, the children they might have, the life they would build. And she knew she was making the right choice. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, the first day of March bringing hints of coming spring. Emma dressed carefully in her new white dress, her hands shaking slightly as she pinned her hair up. She looked at herself in the small mirror and hardly recognized the woman staring back. This was not the desperate widow who had stumbled into town 2 months ago. This was someone new, someone hopeful and strong. Rosa arrived to accompany Emma to town, exclaiming over her dress and helping with final preparations. They rode together in the wagon, and Emma felt her nervousness grow. What if Ethan had changed his mind? What if this was all a mistake? But when she entered the small church and saw Ethan waiting at the altar in his best suit, his face lighting up at the sight of her, all doubts vanished. He looked at her as though she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, and Emma felt her heart overflow with love for him. The ceremony was simple and brief. They spoke their vows in strong, clear voices, promising to love and honor each other for all their days. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed Emma with tender joy, and she kissed him back, not caring who was watching. The celebration afterward at the ranch was rowdy and fun. The ranch hands had cleaned the barn and set up tables. There was music and dancing and more food than Emma had thought possible. People from neighboring ranches came, bearing gifts and good wishes. Even some of the townspeople attended. Catherine Green appeared late in the afternoon, and Emma tensed, but the woman simply approached and said, "I wish you happiness, Mrs. Lewis. Truly. Ethan deserves a good woman, and I believe you are that." "Thank you," Emma said, surprised by the sincerity in Catherine's voice. "I was wrong to spread gossip. I allowed my wounded pride to make me unkind. I hope you can forgive me." "Of course. There is nothing to forgive." Catherine nodded and moved away, and Emma felt a weight lift. Perhaps things would be all right after all. As the sun began to set, Ethan found Emma and pulled her aside. "Are you ready to go? I thought we might escape while everyone is distracted." "Where are we going? You will see." They slipped away to the house, which was blessedly quiet after the noise of the celebration. Ethan led Emma to his room, which he had spent the last week preparing. It was larger than her small bedroom, with a big bed covered in quilts, a dresser, and a window overlooking the western pastures. "Our room now," he said, watching her face. "I moved all your things in here this morning. I hope that is all right." "It is perfect." Ethan closed the door and pulled Emma into his arms. "Hello, wife. Hello, husband." They kissed, and this time there was no reason to hold back. This was their wedding night, the beginning of their life together. Emma let herself feel everything she had been suppressing: the desire, the love, the hope for the future. Ethan was gentle and patient, making sure she felt safe and cherished. What passed between them that night was more than physical. It was a joining of hearts and souls, a promise made in the most intimate way possible. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed, talking quietly in the darkness. "Are you happy?" Ethan asked, his hand tracing patterns on her arm. "I am. Are you?" "More than I ever imagined possible." He kissed her forehead. "When I found you in the snow, I thought I was just helping someone in need. I had no idea you would become everything to me. You saved my life that day in every way that matters." "No, Emma, we saved each other." The weeks that followed were a time of adjustment and joy. Emma moved fully into her role as Ethan's wife, and they learned the rhythms of sharing a life. They worked side by side during the day and came together at night, their physical connection deepening their emotional bond. Spring came slowly, the snow melting to reveal brown earth that would soon green. Emma started planning the garden, eager to see things grow. The ranch work intensified as calving season began, and there were many nights when Ethan came in exhausted, barely able to stay awake through dinner. Emma discovered she was pregnant in late April. She had suspected for a week or two but waited to be certain before telling Ethan. When she finally said the words over breakfast one morning, he froze with his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. "Pregnant. You are certain?" "As certain as I can be without a doctor. But yes, I believe so." Ethan set down his cup carefully, then stood and pulled Emma into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "A baby. We are going to have a baby." Emma felt his shoulders shake and realized with surprise that he was crying. "Ethan. Are you all right? I am so happy. I never thought." His voice broke. "My parents wanted grandchildren so badly. They did not live to see it, but I like to think they know somehow." Emma held him tight, her own eyes filling with tears. "I think they know. I think they are happy for us." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Emma continued her work for as long as she could, though Ethan tried to make her rest more than she was comfortable with. The ranch hands were excited about the coming baby, particularly Old Bill, who had delivered more than one calf and insisted his skills would transfer to human babies if needed. Emma hoped they would not have to test that theory. As summer arrived, bringing heat and the constant work of running a ranch. Emma's belly grew. She felt the baby move for the first time in June and immediately grabbed Ethan's hand to let him feel. His face when he felt the tiny flutter was pure wonder. "That is our child," he whispered. "Our baby." "Yes. Boy or girl, do you think?" "I do not know. Does it matter?" "Not at all. As long as you both are healthy, I do not care." They talked late into the night about names, about the future, about what kind of parents they wanted to be. Ethan spoke of teaching their child to ride and rope, to respect the land and the animals. Emma imagined reading stories, teaching letters and numbers, passing on her mother's recipes. In August, as Emma entered her final months, Rosa came to stay at the ranch to help. She and Miguel spoke primarily Spanish, but Rosa knew enough English to communicate, and she had 6 children of her own. Emma was grateful for her presence and her knowledge. The baby came in late September, after a labor that lasted through the night and into the next day. Ethan stayed by Emma's side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, offering encouragement. When their son finally entered the world with a lusty cry, Ethan cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "A boy," Rosa announced, wrapping the baby in a soft blanket. "A beautiful, healthy boy." She placed the infant in Emma's arms, and Emma looked down at the tiny face, the dark hair, the gray eyes already trying to focus. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, his arm around Emma, staring at their son with an expression of awe. "He is perfect. Emma, he is absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" They had discussed names endlessly, but had not decided. Now, looking at this tiny person, Ethan said, "What about Edward after my father? We could call him Eddie." "Edward Lewis," Emma tested the name. "I like it. Eddie. Yes, that is right." Over the next weeks, they adjusted to life with a newborn. Eddie was a good baby, healthy and strong, though he kept them up at night with his demands to be fed. Emma was exhausted but happier than she had ever been. Watching Ethan with their son, seeing the gentle way he held the tiny body, hearing him sing soft lullabies in the middle of the night, made her fall even more deeply in love with her husband. The first year of Eddie's life passed in a blur. He grew and changed, learning to smile, to laugh, to sit up and eventually crawl. The ranch hands adored him, taking turns holding him and making silly faces to earn his gummy grins. Charlie in particular was smitten, declaring that Eddie was the spitting image of Ethan as a baby. As Eddie approached his first birthday, Emma discovered she was pregnant again. This time the news was less surprising but no less joyful. Ethan kissed her thoroughly and said, "I hope you are ready for a house full of children, because I do not think we are done yet." Emma laughed. "As long as you help with the diaper washing, I can handle however many children we are blessed with." Their second child, a daughter they named Elizabeth after Emma's mother, arrived the following summer. She had Emma's blonde hair and Ethan's gray eyes, and a disposition far more demanding than her brother's. Eddie, now walking and talking in simple sentences, was fascinated by his baby sister, though he had to be watched carefully to ensure his affection did not get too enthusiastic. The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and growth. The ranch prospered under Ethan's management, growing from 200 head to nearly 500. They hired more hands and built a new, larger bunkhouse. Emma's garden flourished, providing vegetables for the table and flowers for the house. She taught Elizabeth to sew and Eddie to read, while Ethan taught them both to ride and to respect the land that sustained them. More children came. Another son named Thomas, then twin girls they named Alice and Anne, and finally, when Emma was 32, a surprise baby boy they called James. 6 children in 10 years kept Emma constantly busy, but she would not have traded it for anything. The house was loud and chaotic and full of love. Ethan proved to be an excellent father, patient and kind but firm when needed. He taught his sons to work hard and treat others with respect. He taught his daughters that they could do anything their brothers could do and never to let anyone tell them otherwise. All the children learned early to help with ranch work, feeding chickens, gathering eggs, and eventually, as they grew, taking on bigger responsibilities. On their 10th anniversary, Ethan and Emma stood on the porch watching their children play in the yard. Eddie, now 9, was teaching 5-year-old Thomas to rope a fence post while Elizabeth organized the younger girls in some elaborate game. Baby James dozed in Emma's arms. "Can you believe it has been 10 years?" Ethan asked, his arm around Emma's waist. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I arrived here, frozen and desperate. Other times it feels like I have always been here, like that other life happened to someone else. You have made this place a true home. You and the children. I cannot imagine life without you." Emma leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steadiness that had been her anchor through everything. "I used to think I was unlucky, losing everything, ending up alone. But now I realize I was actually the luckiest woman alive because my hardship led me here to you. We are both lucky." Ethan kissed the top of her head. "But it was not luck that made this work. It was choice. You chose to keep going when you could have given up. You chose to trust me when you had no reason to. You chose to love me when you could have protected your heart. Every day, we both choose this life, this love. And I would choose it again, every time." Eddie called for his father to come see his improved roping technique, and Ethan jogged down the steps, leaving Emma on the porch with sleeping James. She watched her husband laugh with their son, watched her daughters squabble good-naturedly over the rules of their game, watched the sun set over the western pastures, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. This was her life now. This land, this family, this love. She had arrived with nothing in the depths of winter, and Ethan had given her everything, including the most precious gift of all. A home not just in a physical sense, but in every way that mattered. She had found where she belonged. Charlie emerged from the barn and headed toward the house for dinner. He had aged over the years, his hair now fully white, but he was still strong and still the heart of the ranch operation. He tipped his hat to Emma as he climbed the porch steps. "Smells good, Emma. What are we having?" "Roast chicken with vegetables from the garden and fresh bread, and there is pie for dessert. You are spoiling us." "Someone has to." Charlie chuckled and went inside. Emma called to the children that dinner was ready, and they came running, a stampede of energy and noise. Ethan scooped up the twins, one under each arm, making them shriek with laughter. Elizabeth helped Thomas wash his hands at the pump while Eddie held the door open for everyone. They gathered around the large table Ethan had built when it became clear the old one was too small for their growing family. There was laughter and chatter as everyone found their seats. Ethan said grace, thanking God for the food, the family, and the many blessings they enjoyed. As they ate, the conversation flowed. Eddie talked about the book he was reading. Elizabeth described the new dress she was sewing for her doll. Thomas announced his plan to become the best roper in all of Texas. The twins chattered over each other, and baby James banged his spoon on his high chair tray. Emma looked around the table at these people she loved, this family they had built together. Her heart was so full it almost hurt. She caught Ethan's eye across the table, and he smiled at her, that special smile reserved just for her that still made her pulse quicken after all these years. After dinner, while the older children cleared the table and washed dishes, Emma and Ethan sat on the porch again, enjoying the cool evening air. The stars were beginning to appear, brilliant against the darkening sky. "I was thinking," Ethan said, "that maybe this winter we should take a trip to see your relatives in Missouri. The children should know that side of their family." "That is a kind thought, but it is a long journey with 6 children." "True. But I want them to understand where they come from, both sides. My parents are buried here, and we visit their graves regularly. Your family is far away, but they are still part of who you are, and therefore part of who our children are." Emma considered. She had not seen her cousins and aunt in over a decade. They had exchanged letters occasionally, but had never met her husband or children. "I would like that. Yes, let us plan for it." "Good. We will go after the fall roundup, before the worst of winter hits." They did make that journey, and it was challenging but worthwhile. Emma's elderly aunt wept to meet her great-nieces and great-nephews. Her cousins welcomed them warmly. The children learned about their mother's early life, saw the house where she had grown up, visited the grave of the husband who had come before their father. On the journey home, Eddie asked, "Did you love him?" "Your first husband," Emma considered how to answer honestly but appropriately. "I cared for him. He was a good man who treated me well, but I did not love him the way I love your father. That kind of love only comes along once in a lifetime if you are very lucky." "How do you know when it is that kind of love?" Elizabeth asked. Ethan fielded this one. "You know because the person makes you want to be better. They challenge you and support you in equal measure. You can be fully yourself with them, showing your worst and best sides, and they love you anyway. They become part of you, so that imagining life without them is like imagining life without breathing." Emma reached across the wagon and took his hand. "Your father explained that very well." The years continued to pass. The children grew and changed, each developing their own personalities and dreams. Eddie proved to have a head for business and began managing the ranch finances while still a teenager. Elizabeth had her mother's nurturing nature and often talked of becoming a teacher. Thomas was a natural cowboy, happiest on horseback working cattle. The twins were inseparable and clever, always scheming up some plan or another. And James, the baby, was thoughtful and quiet, preferring books to physical labor, though he never shirked his responsibilities. When Eddie turned 18, he began courting the daughter of a neighboring rancher. Emma watched her firstborn fall in love and felt the bittersweet pang of seeing her child become a man. But she liked the girl, Sarah, who was smart and kind and clearly adored Eddie. "Is this how you felt when I told you I was engaged?" Emma asked Ethan one night. "Like your heart was breaking and soaring at the same time?" "I imagined so, though I was not around for your first engagement." He pulled her close. "But yes, watching our children grow up and start their own lives is both wonderful and painful. Mostly wonderful, though." Eddie and Sarah married the following spring in a ceremony much larger than Emma and Ethan's had been. The whole community attended, and it was a joyous occasion. Eddie brought his bride home to the ranch, where Ethan had built them a small house on the eastern edge of the property. Within a year, Emma and Ethan became grandparents when Sarah delivered a healthy baby girl. Holding her granddaughter for the first time, Emma felt the circle of life complete itself in a profound way. She had come to this place with nothing, and now look at what had grown. Children, grandchildren, a legacy of love that would continue long after she was gone. More grandchildren followed as the years passed. Elizabeth married a teacher and moved to town but visited often with her growing family. Thomas took over more of the ranch operations as Ethan slowed down, eventually marrying a spirited young woman who could outride most men. The twins married brothers from a ranch to the south, causing much amusement. And James, true to his scholarly nature, became a lawyer, though he always maintained that the ranch was his true home. Emma and Ethan aged together, their hair graying, their movements slowing, but their love never diminishing. If anything, it deepened with time, becoming something solid and enduring that needed no words to express. On their 40th anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, Emma looked at Ethan and marveled at the life they had built. He was 70 now, still strong but weathered by decades of hard work. His hair was silver, his face lined, but his gray eyes still held that same kindness and strength that had drawn her to him all those years ago. 40 years, she said as they sat together on the porch after everyone had left. How did we get so old? Slowly, and then all at once, Ethan replied. He took her hand, his fingers interlacing with hers in a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. But I would not change a single day, not even the hard ones, especially not the hard ones. Those taught us what we were capable of, how strong we were together. Emma thought of the difficult times, the years of drought that had nearly destroyed them, the fever that had almost taken Thomas as a child, the accident that had left Ethan laid up for months with a broken leg, the deaths of friends and neighbors and beloved animals. Yes, there had been hardship. But there had also been so much joy. We did well, didn't we? She asked. With our life, our children, all of it, we did better than well. We built something real and good and lasting. Look at our family, Emma. Every one of them healthy and happy and capable. That is because of us, because of the foundation we built, the love we showed them. Because of you, Emma corrected. You were the one who gave me a chance when no one else would have. You were the one who saw something worth saving in a half-frozen stranger. No, Emma, we saved each other. I was existing before you came, going through the motions. You brought life back to this place, to me. You made everything mean something again. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. You were and are the best thing that ever happened to me. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, as she always did when Ethan spoke from his heart. After 40 years, he could still make her cry with his simple honesty. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over land that had been in Ethan's family for 3 generations and would, God willing, be there for many more. The ranch was thriving under Thomas's management, the cattle healthy, the business sound. They had built something that would last. Do you ever think about that day? Emma asked. When you found me? Sometimes. I think about how easily I might have missed you, taken a different route into town, been delayed by something. How close you came to dying in the snow. And then I think about everything that would not have existed if that had happened. Our marriage, our children, all those grandchildren. An entire branch of life that would never have been. It frightens me sometimes how thin the thread was. But it held. That is what matters. The thread held, and look what came from it. As darkness fell and the stars emerged, they went inside to the house that had been their home for 4 decades. The children were long grown and gone to their own homes, but the house still felt full of their presence, their memories. Emma could almost hear echoes of childhood laughter, of arguments and celebrations, of all the life that had been lived within these walls. They prepared for bed, helping each other with buttons and buckles that had become harder to manage with aging fingers. They climbed into the same bed they had shared since their wedding night, fitting together with the ease of long practice. I love you, Ethan said, as he did every night. It had become their ritual, words spoken into the darkness before sleep. I love you, Emma replied, as she always did. And meaning it just as much as the first time she had said it, perhaps even more. Emma fell asleep wrapped in Ethan's arms, warm and safe and home in every sense of the word. She dreamed of snow and stars, of a young man extending his hand to a desperate woman, of the words that had changed everything. "This is your home." And it had been, for 40 beautiful years and counting. Morning came with sunlight and the sounds of the ranch waking. Emma rose before Ethan, as she had done for decades, and made coffee in the kitchen that had been hers for so long she knew every inch of it by heart. She carried a cup out to the porch and stood watching the eastern sky turn pink and gold. Thomas emerged from his house leading his saddled horse, preparing for the day's work. He saw her and waved, and she waved back, her heart full of pride. Her son, carrying on the legacy, building his own future on the foundation she and Ethan had laid. Eddie would arrive later with Sarah, and whichever of their children still lived at home. Elizabeth might come by with her latest batch of students, bringing chaos and energy. The twins would blow through at some point, always together, always scheming. And James would ride out from town on Saturday as he usually did, needing his weekly dose of ranch life to balance his work in the courts. This was her life, her legacy, her home. Built from nothing, created through love and hard work and determination. The woman who had stumbled into Shafter nearly lifeless all those years ago barely existed anymore, transformed so completely into the person she had become that sometimes Emma could hardly believe they were the same. But they were. She was still Emma, just a version of herself she had never imagined possible. A version that had been loved into existence by a good man who had seen something worth saving when everyone else, including herself, had seen only hopelessness. Ethan joined her on the porch, his arm slipping around her waist in the gesture that had become their own private language. They stood together, watching the sun rise over their land, their family, their life. No words were needed. After 40 years, they communicated in silence as easily as in speech. "Good morning, my love," Ethan finally said. "Good morning," Emma replied, leaning into his warmth. And it was a good morning, one of thousands they had shared and would continue to share for as long as God granted them. Each day a gift, each moment precious, each year added to the tapestry of their life together. Emma looked at the land stretching before them, at the cattle grazing peacefully, at the smoke rising from Thomas's chimney where his wife was making breakfast for their family. This was home. This had always been home, from the moment Ethan had said those words on that frozen night so long ago. She had arrived with nothing and been given everything. Not just shelter and food and work, but love and family and purpose. A whole life, rich and full and exactly what she needed. "Thank you," she whispered, not just to Ethan but to whatever providence had led her to this place, to this man, to this life. "For what?" Ethan asked. "For everything. For that day. For this life. For 40 years of love." He kissed her temple. "Thank you for saying yes. For taking a chance on a simple rancher. For building this life with me." They stayed there as the sun climbed higher, content in their companionship, secure in their love, certain that whatever time they had left would be spent exactly where they wanted to be. Together on this land, surrounded by the family they had created. This was home. This was love. This was everything, and it was more than enough. It was everything Emma had never known to dream of, given to her by a cowboy who saw worth where others saw only desperation, who offered home when she had nowhere to go. She had arrived in winter with nothing. He had given her everything. And together, they had built a life that would echo through generations, a testament to what happens when kindness meets courage, when love is given freely and received gratefully, when two people choose each other every single day for 40 years and beyond. The story could have ended in that snow, with a frozen woman and a lonely man. Instead, it was just beginning. And what a beginning it had been, launching decades of love, family, struggle, triumph, and the quiet daily joy of sharing a life with someone who made everything better just by existing. As the morning sun warmed the land, Emma and Ethan turned back to the house, ready to face whatever the day brought, ready to continue the adventure they had started all those years ago. Together, always together. Home.